Welcome participants. So this session we start with a question. Dear participants, do you agree that the terms diversity, equity, inclusion become empty rhetoric because disability is rarely part of these conversations? Outside of modifications to the physical space, as we all know, such as ramps, classroom setting, and classroom or instructional modifications. So it has been reduced to that level. So why are we talking about advocating understanding? What is the need behind advocating? Why do we need to voice? Now the voices of the neurodiversity movement are proliferating, and this is the result behind advocating understanding. So these movements are carrying and empowering, advocating, debating, insisting, decrying, lobbying. It is necessary. Influencing policy and designing research. So these are the needs which have come out of this various neurodiversity movement taking place to the different parts of the globe. So without understanding, we cannot vouch for the neurodiversity celebration or accepting neurodiversity, inclusion and neurodiversity. So advocating understanding is one of the good practices towards neurodiversity and inclusion. Now what do we need to understand? We will be voicing for neurodiversity and inclusion, right? So what do we need to understand before we plunge into this activity? We need to know the characteristics of the neurodiverse community, recognize the common strengths of neurodivergent students or employees, support neurodiversity initiatives within a campus or workplace or any space on this globe, and harp on advocacy initiatives on neurodiversity, be it on individual level, government level or non-government level. Now, these advocacy activities can include public education and influencing public opinion, research for interpreting problems and suggesting preferred solutions, constituent action and public mobilizations, agenda setting and policy decision. As we already said, lobbying is also important here, policy implementation, monitoring and feedback, and also some other practical on-the-field activities. Now, let me check with you all. Dear participants, how aware are you of neurodiversity? Like we often say, there are role models. We harp on the role models as we call embracing neurodiversity or accepting neurodiversity. Are you aware of the facts that I am going to say now? There are a number of people who are under this umbrella term neurodiversity, or rather, they have a neurodivergent brain. The first one, John Robson, autistic self-taught electronic design, writes books, restores cars, shoots photographs, teaches neurodiversity and works to shape autism research and treatment policy. This is something very ecstatic. The next name is known to the world. Greta Thunberg, Asperger's. It's a superpower. 16-year-old Swedish environmental activist, Nobel Peace Prize nominations 1920. And she has been also awarded by Times the Person of the Year 2019. Rachel Worsley, autism, ADHD. Invisible Disability Campaign for International Day of People with Disability. She is the founder and CEO of Neurodiversity Media, She's a speaker too. Next, John Marble, autistic, appointed by President Obama to the United States Office of Personnel Management, neurodiversity and autism employment expert, public speaker, founder at Pivot Neurodiversity. Next in line is Sienna Castellon, Asperger's, dyslexia, dyspraxia, ADHD. She is the founder of Neurodiversity Celebration Week, author, collaborator with UN Young Leaders for the Sustainable Development Goals. And lastly, a 9-year-old boy, autistic. He is a YouTuber and teacher of all things marine biology. And he prefers to call him as 9-year-old boy. So these are some of the neurodivergent leaders, don't they? So can we think of such talents outside the so-called quote-unquote normal community? So this is where the understanding of neurodiversity requires. Only then we can advocate, voice for it. We can vouch for the inclusion, we can vouch for celebrating neurodiversity. As we were mentioning some of the activities under advocacy, so these activities can be performed or carried out through different layers. What are the different layers of advocacy? It can be at the individual level, family, friends, public policy, community, and or institutional level. So these are the different layers where we can vouch for the issue in concern. As we go deeper into the advocacy and understanding of neurodiversity, let us put on some high notes of advocacy on neurodiversity. Objections to neurodiversity are often based on an erroneous conception of the tenets of the movement. Fundamentally, neurodiversity emphasizes the collective strength inherent in cognitive diversity, and that this strength arises from all kinds of differences, including those associated with intellectual disability or language impairment. Addition to this, neurodiversity activism, which includes some non-speaking activists, specifically includes and advocates for those who are unable to do so themselves. So a balanced view of neurodiversity recognizes that whilst diversity brings fundamental collective advantages, within any one neurodivergent individual, weaknesses are often the inextricable partner of the strengths, and that individuals can want things to be different and still want to be themselves. And that's where we embrace neurodiversity. So the very first layer of embracing neurodiversity is to understand. Having understood, you can vouch for neurodiversity. And that's when you can change the minds of the people. So this is the crux of advocating understanding on neurodiversity. Now, as we talk on the advocacy and understanding of neurodiversity, these lines are a perfect example to this. The growth of autistic self-advocacy and the neurodiversity movement has brought about new ethical, theoretical, and ideological debates within autism theory, research, and practice. So one thing is for sure, in any of the conditions and spectrum under neurodiversity needs research and practice in order to bring about positive outcome, change mindset. So it is often said that there is some distinction between advocacy, and advocacy can be on organizational representation, and as participation has led to the contradictory use of terms direct and indirect advocacy in practice and in research. Well, in research, indirect advocacy may describe the participatory aspects of non-profit advocacy, particularly the capacity of groups to stimulate individual citizens to take action on their own behalf. In contrast, direct advocacy may refer to lobbying and other appearances before key decision makers by organizational representatives on behalf of others. So let us focus on some tips advocating neurodiversity in the institutions, organizations, or any workplace. So these tips are: raise awareness and promote a diverse workforce through a culture. Attract and retain a talent pool of neurodiverse employees. Believing in them is very important. Using of positive, inclusive language at all times is a prerogative. Support neurodiversity in the workplace through sensitization among stakeholders. These sensitizations are actually advocating, understanding, embracing, initiating talks, etc. We have to be aware of our legal obligations by public recommendations or through public recommendations and support. Reward and recognition is no less, and it does boost and retain inclusivity in any institutions, organizations, or workplace. As we draw near to the closure of this session, let us sum up the discussion. Neurodiversity advocates point out that our understanding of lack thereof, of why certain behaviors are common in those with neurodivergent people, isn't too different from our understanding of the workings of a neurotypical brain. No one has a deep understanding of why or how any of us prefer. Say, let us voice, support, and recommend for accepting change. However, most would agree that there are no absolutes. The decisions to use therapy, the type and intensity of that therapy, and how involved the individual receiving that therapy would be in the decision-making process, and it needs to be handled on a case-by-case basis with respect to the severity of each individual's condition. Next, the debate over whether neurodiversity is something to be celebrated or treated is not likely to end anytime soon. The debate will go on, but the more it stretches, the more our initiation would be to advocate, to make everyone understand about the positive, about the innovation and the creation that these differently wired brain people can bring about to the society. And lastly, the ethical questions over behavioral treatments are not new, and they are still a long way from being settled. Dear participants, as we come to the end of this session, we may recollect that in order to advocate the understanding of neurodiversity and bring it under the umbrella of inclusion as a good practice, we can adopt some of the strategies like acknowledging the differences, offer implicit bias training for everyone, provide mentoring, let people learn by doing something, encourage personal evaluation, never stop asking questions, and let us value all diversity.